Let us now take a step forward in comprehending what's behind the curtain, the silent things that many people are a bit apprehensive about. Either they don't want to ask, or they're just doing it in faith in the back of their mind, or it never came across their mind at all. The question in this video, the issue of how businesses are taxed compared to trust. Quite often, you've seen me shown and explain certain things when it comes to qualification tax in many videos. Look at any videos that begins with Trust 101 or Trust 102. That's usually the yellow brick road, the core of it. Some are alluded to, some are shown and explained directly, the why and how of it. But information is so vast that it is understandable for someone whose foundation has been annulled by way of either misinformation or they just are freshly coming into this, for them to not even think of certain things or just not comprehend fully that, so this is how it is. So my job is to keep showing you, and the more that I speak with people, the more that I realize, so there's a necessity to actually entertain this, which is why I love hearing questions from people, even though to them might sound a bit silly or maybe even unnecessary, but it's good to ask. There are certain things that I know, but I would never mention it, not because I don't want to. If I don't want to mention it, the worst that could happen is I'll just tell you I don't want to tell you that, or I'm not going to tell you that. But there are things that I know that doesn't even come across my mind to mention unless people actually ask. Think about it. Mechanic, someone brought a vehicle to them with a weak battery. The one who has the vehicle knows something is wrong, but it has to do with the battery because, well, everything else is new. They don't know how to test whether the battery is the problem or not. And that's preventing the vehicle from starting. They don't know if it's the alternator. They don't know if it's the solenoid or the starter. Once they take it to the mechanic takes a very small, funny looking tool with two prongs, put it on one end, put it on the other, realizes, this battery is weak. There's supposed to be a particular charge that's supposed to be released from a healthy battery, regardless of whether it's turned on or turned off. So they figured out immediately that's the battery. And the one with the vehicle also sees them doing that. So they have a trust that, okay, this mechanic has a tool and they know what they're doing. And they say it's the battery. Cool. Went to the auto store, purchased a new battery, put it in, everything is working fine. The moment everything is working fine, most people who use the vehicle, they don't think about, okay, how do they figure it out? And if they don't ask that mechanic, what is this that you just did? The mechanic will not explain. All the mechanic knows is, all right, I solved their problem because I knew where the source of the problem is and I told them what to do. Mission accomplished. And the one with the vehicle accomplished the mission, which is, look, I have to use this vehicle to go here, to go there, and I don't want any problem. Mission accomplished on both ends. But some people who have vehicle, in this case, the vehicle here is the trust that you'll be using to navigate from public to private, from private to public, to retain the integrity of that which is rightfully yours in the midst of the vast oceans of fuckery that exists in this world, and their representatives who have been trained and conditioned to be comfortable with doing things that's a detriment to you. So an inquisitive mind will go, okay, this vehicle that I'm carrying around, how did that mechanic even eventually figure out that it's the battery? I saw that they did in fact figure it out, but how? So they go back to the mechanic and say, hey, that tool that you just used, what is it called? And the mechanic goes, oh, it's called a multimeter. It's what you use to figure out the electrical flow from any type of metallic object or anything that's supposed to conduct electricity. Ding. That's it right there. But the mechanic doesn't even know to say, hey, look, this thing that I'm using is called a multimeter. If it's more than 12 point so-and-so, then that means the battery's life is good. The mechanic doesn't have the responsibility to explain that. And in fact, the mechanic doesn't even think about it. He or she just knows, you know what, if they come in here and explain the basics to me, I'm just going to go straight to the mode of operation and get them the solution. That's it. The same applies with this pen and paper situation. So the stuff many people worry about or attempt to avoid, which is rightful, legal, and lawful, aka tax avoidance, not tax evasion, is by using trust. So the question is, well, any other entities that we know as persons called corporations exist also. And if such corporations exist and they're known as person, and express trust exists and they're known as separate person, a separate entity of their own, depending on how you're functioning with it, shouldn't the way they're taxed be the same? Enters Elliott versus Freeman, 220 U.S. 178, 1911. Just as a quick revision of this particular video, as to how you comprehend these numbers you're looking at whenever you see any case citations, telling you the volume. So the first number you see here after the names of the party, this is the plaintiff, this is the defendant. At North America, for Supreme Court cases, the one who retains the volumes and the page numbers of the actual documents, of the actual court cases, of the actual court orders and the memorandum and opinion that says, hey, this exists, you can't do this. This exists, you can do that. It's called the U.S. report. You go to it, you see home, opinion, U.S. report. This U.S. is the same reference you see here. The opinion of the Supreme Court of the United States are published officially in the United States report. The opinions of the Supreme Court of the United States are published officially in the United States report, U.S. report, U.S. This is not an official publication. This is just a third-party website. This has, even though it says just, it has to do with justice, U.S. Supreme Court. These people are just some private business. And they're taking copy and paste of extract from here, and they're putting it on their website. The crawlers and the scrapers that they use makes it easier to come across their website first before you come into the official, actual stuff. So the official, actual stuff just give you a bunch of other long-winded responses, but if you want to look at it, here it is. For instance, 2018 term is volume 588, and it has parts to it. So and so, so and so. You can go all the way back to year 1991. If you want to go back before then, you would have to call them, or there's a search function, because back then they've yet to scan things digitally, because remember, the search function here is digitized. That's the reason why you're able to look back into this database, into court orders in the Supreme Court cases. And if the Supreme Court doesn't have it, the Library of Congress will have it. They call it the United States Supreme Court Collection. You can look it up online, U.S. reports by volume, right here, all the way from volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way. I'm telling you how I do my research. I'm showing it to you right here. So it's very straightforward once you get it. You can look it up by the case topic or by the acting judge also, if you choose. You should click it, for instance, the volume 1 right here. So you see 1.us, you see the location, you see the year 1776. So the Supreme Court website might not keep the scanned copy or the digitized copy of the old one because they were handwritten. But the Library of Congress back then, at the beginning, is a library meant to keep copies of things. So they digitize it because that is their responsibility. So some acting judges trying to give you some bullshit about, your case law is wrong, it's not right, it's not real. And they're trying to play you even though you know it's real and you find it here and you don't want to go through a notary to say, hey, this is correct from this website, Supreme Court Justice. Just look at the volume, look at the page, go on this Supreme Court website. As always, you should most likely use Supreme Court cases because it applies in all jurisdictions. Look it up. If you can't find it, go to the Library of Congress, look it up. And this is an official publication, and use the rule of evidence that we went over in many videos in the past when it comes to official publications. The onus is on you to find those. It's in the Court 101 videos. And you have your admissible evidence right here without you needing a notary. If you know the volume and the book number, you can find it here. The seal that you need is that of the Library of Congress and the Supreme Court. So we've digressed far enough. Elliott versus Freeman, volume 220. Hey, I'm inviting you to come join the patron page. Not only do you get access to documents, posts, and videos that you will never find on any other platforms, you also get instant access to webinars that otherwise will cost far more. And we speak of things that usually we would not be able to speak of on any other platforms far more freely. On top of that, you get the opportunity to send me monthly questions. Jurisdiction of the United States Supreme Court from the U.S. Report, page 178, year 1911. This has not been overruled. In other videos, I've shown you how to look into cases that have been overruled. The onus is also on you to find those. This has not been overruled. We're not going to waste too much time at this preliminary stuff. So let's get to it. It was the intention of Congress to embrace within the corporation tax provision of the Tariff Act of August 5, 1909. So now, one party is saying, hey, this man's trust must be taxed because they used it in business. Well, the next thing to do is to go to the state legislature and look at the intent of the legislative department of government, which is one of the three main ones: legislative, executive, judicial, which you would usually meet first in the constitutions of any given state or the federal level, more particularly the federal level. You see it speak about executive, Article 1, legislature, Article 3, judicial. So in order for you to determine the main pretext of what's going on here, which is one party saying, hey, this guy used this trust, so he made some money, tax him. The trial court said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. We're going to tax him. Screw him. The appeal court say, oh, something is not quite right. We're going to throw this out and we'll reverse that. And the guy with the trust said, I'm still not satisfied with that. So they took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court saying, yeah. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the intent of legislature as to how trusts were supposed to be taxed compared to a corporation. But they began their supreme decision by saying it was the intention of Congress to embrace within the corporate tax provision of the Tariff Act of August 5, 1909. They provided a particular statute section. Only such corporations and joint stock associations, remember, your trust will have stock. So now that we're slowly threading into the business and the intricate nature of things with trust and its use, some people will try to give you some stupid gibberish that a business trust is different from an express trust. When time and again I've been telling you, express trust is simply a unique type of trust that you can use at any time, however you want, business or otherwise. Most people have not functioned with trust enough to even comprehend what that means. People think going into ChatGPT these days, people think going to ChatGPT will give them the answers. ChatGPT will not give you the answer. It will give you some basic limited stuff. And the scrapers that ChatGPT use to convert into a language model for you is limited. Even if you use the paid version, it's limited based on your IP configuration, and the GDP of your area is limited based on similar questions within that geographical bound that would allow it to keep updating its system because it knows people are asking more of this, so it has to refine the answer more. People don't even realize what GPT means and how machine learning works. It's all about machine learning. People don't realize that. That's the reason why you will go one day, ask the same question, it will give you a completely different answer. A week later, it will give you another different answer. But there might be a thin line that kind of connects it, but it will be different nonetheless because it is constantly learning. You are the one feeding it information for it to learn what is right or wrong. Yet you are going to it assuming that it knows what is right or wrong just because it can give you search results it has scraped from the internet in a conversational tone. People don't get it. And if you're taking your life into your own hand and you're expecting someone else's bot that's supposed to scrape information as you use it, meaning your tendency of how you type, it's learning from you also. It's learning about your personality, your device IMEI, it's being registered, how often you come and use it, all that, it's putting into its own machine learning. Separate from the machine learning of it scraping information and learning information based on the question you ask, so that it can refine it in the future for anyone with similar questions. Based on the GDP, based on the geographical area, based on the demographic, yes, all those things matter. Watch this patron post on what GPT means for you to really get it. So when it comes to stocks, your trust have stocks too. In other words, Shares, stocks is just another fancy word for equity. A very fancy word for equity. And you will usually hear people say trust and equity is the same, because trust is in the realm of equity. Because, well, there's a beneficiary, right? Please connect these dots. Connect these dots. And in doing so, I actually want people to have apprehensions. Because when you have apprehensions, that means your brain is actually thinking. When people use GPT, the apprehension decreases and the brain stops thinking. So now the device and the machine becomes smarter than you, and you bring to life the shit you see in TV and movies. It's happening. And generations become dumber and dumber. Adults give birth to children who also become dumber and dumber because of their dependency on not using their reasoning and problem solving skills. Oh, here goes Muhammad and his harsh words again. Look, these aren't harsh words. These are just simple realities. You ought to be happy someone is here just giving it to you honestly like this. There's enough bullshit in the world where people are buttering each other up with lies, and people are suffering with it. So my thing is, I'm telling you, be apprehensive. Once you start being apprehensive, you start seeing these words, buzzwords, and go, wait, stocks. Wait, trust certificate units. What are those? Shares. What are shares? Equitable interest. What are equitable interest? Equitable units. What is equitable unit? Oh, stocks. Wait, stock market. If stock is the same thing as equitable unit, that means private entities can invest privately and put it in the public and get people to give them equity share based on the system of SOSU. Oh, wait a minute here. What's going on? So if I get that back from that method, am I going to be taxed? Because, well, there's something called joint stock association, and there are corporate laws that deals with it. Which brings us back to where we are now. And the question, does the way corporation stocks are taxed apply to trust and their interest? Because corporations have equitable interest too. Corporations are private businesses. So people tend to think trust is the only thing that could possibly be private, because that word private has been thrown to them as a buzzword and they associate with it solely with trust. No, it's not. LLCs can be private. Corporations can be private. The issue is, how did it originate? Who gave you the permission for it to exist? How does the immunity that you are afforded affects you? Who is giving you the immunity? That's the stuff you're supposed to think about. And we've went over that in many Trust 101 videos. At this point, you should be able to answer those questions. Only such corporations and joint stock associations as are organized under some statutes. You now see there are two different things used here. The word statute and the word legislature. I want to bring your attention to something when it comes to statutes. I want you to remember this word. I'll show you something interesting very soon. Only such corporations and joint stock associations as are organized under some statute, meaning there's a specific type of statute that applies to corporate stocks, corporate equity, corporate interest, or derived from that source meaning corporate activities, some quality or benefit not existing at the common law. A trust formed in a state. Now, this is a trust that is formed in a state, meaning this is a statutory trust they're speaking about. They're not even speaking about non-statutory trust, that you originate yourself and you have your private parties and you have your private meetings and you have your private meetings. And no, by the way, using a situs does not statutize a trust, because you're not giving them the core of what statutizes it. If you look at the details of a statutory trust and you look at the requirement of what you're meant to submit and to show, and you look at the use of situs, and you look at the simplicity of what you're meant to show, you realize those are two different worlds. This is another reason why I tell people, look, just do the declaration and the basic trust minute transferring the information. Everything else, optional. as far as now is concerned. And if you're to do something else later when it comes to trust minute, there are very certain trust minutes you would use. So in this case, they're speaking about a statutory trust, not even a private trust. So if a statutory trust can kick ass against corporations because it's a separate world, then surely a private trust is the same thing, because a private trust is what you stipulate and no one else can. I've shown in the past, even with express trust, the most they can do is refer to say, look, this exists also, but they cannot stipulate or limit it because it is meant to be private, but they acknowledge it. A trust formed in a state, in other words, a statutory trust, to which these parties are saying, look, this is a statutory trust because it's formed in this state. Therefore, corporate stock interests, corporate equities should apply to it because they made money using a trust. A trust formed in a state where statutory joint stock companies are unknown, meaning we don't know the details of its stocks. They're telling you how they gain jurisdiction again. This is a great jewel here. What this is telling you here is, even if it's a statutory trust, so long as we don't know anything about how the stocks are distributed, we can't even speak about its taxation at all. Which goes to say, a trust cannot be taxed, one, if the way you distribute your TCUs are unknown. And do you know